Hey everyone, it's PJ from Games Overboard, Well House Exorcism, Danger Dice, all of them.
All the above.
So anyways, Shayna's here too.
What up, party people?
And this is just a little intro we are making for our early episodes here.
For the Well House Exorcism.
As you notice, we sound pretty darn good right now, but when the episode proper starts, not so much.
Baby, I always sound good.
Actually, yeah, you came in nice the whole time. It was kind of everyone else. But it was our first batch of episodes. We were still learning how the technology worked.
We got new technology since then.
And we started recording in a different place as well. So we just ask that you bear with us. We thank everyone who has been recommending us and sharing us and sticking with us. Like, those first episodes are rough, as you're going to hear in a couple seconds here. They're rough, but we're hoping to remaster them this summer or re-record them. Yeah. So until then, please enjoy, and just know that the quality does get better.
Yes, quality gets so much better.
And we can't thank you enough for all the support, and please email us with any recommendations you have, and spread the word about the podcast.
Spread the word about my podcast. Mama needs to retire.
Yes, this is Shanna's podcast. That is true. So we need to make that very clear. This is her baby.
This is my baby.
So, without further ado, everyone, the Well House Exorcism.
Enjoy all the shows.
Hi, welcome back to Danger and Dice. I'm PJ.
Ta-da! I'm Shanna. And with us this week during our mini-series are Laura and Ray, our relations.
Hello, hello.
Thanks for having us, guys.
And a special guest.
Oh, yes. I forgot. Lola, the dog.
If you hear...
Heavy breathing.
Yes.
I think she's going to add something to the story because, we're going to get nervous with your scary stories. And so...
She's already there.
Have a little bit of theater to the
she's feeling it.
the podcast.
Lux breathing. What
Too
better
bad her
sound
face
is there?
ruins it. Like, at least the podcast, you can't see the dopey, dumb dog look that we're getting. What? My name. This is just how I breathe, Mom. But our mini-series is called...
The Well House Exorcism. So you'll hear about our story later. Right now, Laura and Ray are going to tell theirs because they also had crazy stuff happening in the house. In their house.
Yes.
And they have a spring, too.
We do, in our basement. Yes, it kind of sprang up from nowhere years ago.
Oh, wait, I got that.
And, yeah. So, yeah, when we moved into our house, Ray and I were commuting together to work, and we had an hour commute, so it was a bit of a distance. And we came home together, opened the door, to our locked home, and, our dad's English, we drink a lot of tea. First thing I do
We have tea right now.
We are. First thing I do is go to put on a pot of tea after work, and I go to pick up the pot, and it's hot. And I'm very confused by this. So I open up the lid and I look in, and there's tea. There's no tea bags. They've already been removed, but there's freshly brewed, steaming hot tea. The stove is ice cold. And I remember I just called Ray over and I'm like, "Do you see this?" And he's like, "Yeah." And
That's pretty much what I said.
Yeah.
I see it. I don't know why it's here.
"Do you think that Mom and Dad broke into our house and made us tea?" And you're like, "No."
I was thinking that would have had to be a heck of a hoax on your parents' side.
Which they've, never said they did. When we told them about this, they were very shocked and surprised by this story. But that was the very first weird thing that happened.
Now, this was 12 years ago.
At least.
More than.
Yeah,
more than, because we've been in our house almost 16 years.
But that was
okay.
only a week after we had moved in.
Yeah.
So I thought of it
we were in college.
I'm asking because, I don't know if you remember or, it was a weird thing to come home to. Did you find tea bags anywhere?
Yeah.
Gosh, I didn't
Did you
even
look?
look. I didn't.
I wouldn't have thought to look
No.
either,
We didn't
but
look
I just
either.
had to ask.
No, I didn't look. But the thing that really weirds our sister out the most is that Ray and I drank the tea.
See, I would not do that. I'd be good.
She's like, "You drank ghost tea?" And I'm like, "Well, I didn't want to be
Smelled
rude."
like almonds, so we were fine.
Yeah, I poured a third glass and I left it on the counter for whoever and whatever made it for us. So I thought it was, I was like, hey, they can do this every day. But they did not. That was the one and only time for that.
So can we talk about your basement just for a second? Because that's the connection really for our miniseries of our exorcism and then your house. Like my first vision of your basement was like, I honestly thought that you were like a serial killer and you were leading me into the depths of like what was going to be my dungeon. And I was prepared for the lotion line, like put the lotion, like I was afraid. So explain your basement before you did work, because I think our listeners have to hear that.
I don't know that it's so different now. I hate to tell you. Ray, how would you describe the basement?
Scary. Yeah.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, there's a door, and we didn't write this.
Yes, this is what
on
I'm
the
talking
door, but it says "keep out"
Keep door closed.
or "keep door closed."
Keep
I
door
thought
closed.
it said yeah.
Yeah.
That's how long I've been like.
No.
That's how much time has.
Yeah, no, we
Passed
have
since I've been in the
literally
basement.
paid to move the washer and dryer upstairs. So unless the breaker goes for whatever reason, there's no reason for us to go in the basement, which I'm okay with.
Can I paint my story?
Yes.
Now, at the time, I don't think I was even engaged to Pete. I think we were still dating.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
And you still
And
married
you
him.
because that house, I'm not living there. So we go downstairs to the basement because I think we were going to be doing laundry because at the time you had
Yes.
the washer and dryer down there. And so we walk down the steps to the basement, and then there's like a little like area, and then there's another door to the basement proper,
Yes.
which is common to old houses, like for like the well and like really for like storing food, like the cabinetry and all that kind of stuff. So I see the door and it says "keep door closed." It's like painted like what, like in red or
Red,
something.
And
Yeah.
some letters are capitalized and some are lowercase.
Yeah, it is
Super
something you would
creepy.
see in
And
like
it would
a
drive
horror movie.
somebody who
Oh, yeah.
has OCD absolutely crazy
that
because
is
there's
true.
no rhyme or reason to that.
I was more like for like, is this painted with blood? Like I was concerned.
Well, and I feel like I should add in here too that the floor is a dirt floor. The walls have this crumbly plaster.
We're not even there yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So when we get into the basement proper, then so we open up the door. It says "keep door closed" because we obviously listen so well. You go in there and something was sprayed. I think to kill the spiders.
No,
or
I've
something.
learned more about this.
Okay, so when I walk in, the room is like this creepy white color, and there are dead spiders hanging from the ceiling, and it's again dirt floor. White and dead spiders hanging, and you have like stalls in the basement.
Yes.
Which looks like they would have kept like their dogs down there because this is an 1800s house, so probably the hunting dogs or something. I don't know, but there are stalls
Yes.
and there are rings and things in the wall. So I see that, and then you're like, "Oh yeah, the wash and dryer is down at the other end." So I'm gonna walk past every
end.
single stall, every ring and thing in the wall, and I'm like, "Are we going to attach me to the wall?" Like I was concerned.
Well, at the very least, the basement had always been and still continues to be illuminated. There's plenty of light.
There's plenty of light,
Mhm.
and it shines
Some of
off
it.
of the white. The
Yeah.
whole- So what's the white stuff?
Well, I was very concerned because these spiders. There's just thick webbing everywhere, and then there are these spiders that look like they've been coated in dust for centuries. Is how I would describe it. And so, what concerned me the most is that some of the spiders were moving.
What?
Yes, I'm 100% serious. And I have looked it up, and there's apparently a type of fungus that slowly kills insects, and so they're basically zombie spiders, basically. It's just they're covered in fungus.
They're no longer there, though.
Yes. Oh, that's good. But
Mhm.
so that was my first time in your basement. I think in your house.
Yeah, it's not really on the regular tour.
No, it's not. So that's the connection. So I want to have that creepy ambiance to the background with the tea story.
Well, and also let's not forget that you two lived there.
We did.
Just before living here.
We'll tell our stories, but we wanted to have you guys tell yours
Indeed.
first. So, but I think that basement story is important because of like stories you had later of like the late night sounds, and I don't want to give anything away, but like the kitchen and
Yes, we have a lot.
So I think that knowing that the basement had that like writing on there is important, and the dead zombie spiders, which I think just adds a whole other caveat to this. So thank you.
And I'll add too that the keep door closed door was always open from the day that we had moved in. So we did not open it.
That's why you have tea.
Yes.
We didn't open it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Although I think that's more like, that's not so much supernatural. It's just an idea of how gross the basement really was. It wasn't like, it wasn't something supernatural or ghoulish about it.
It's
just
the spiders die.
It's just that maybe we're just not very good homeowners.
Previous homeowners.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, so we had the tea story.
Mm-hmm.
Let's continue. So what's the next thing you remember? Because we're not really going in an order here.
Well, and it was a couple of years after we moved into the house, but certainly my most memorable, and I feel like I need to backtrack a little bit because I tend to be very, not pessimistic, but like cynical about like the supernatural, at the very least for the longest time I had been. I didn't really, buy it. So
I feel the same way until I lived in this house. Yep.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm not really sure, or I'm sure that was just the wind or something like that. Mm-hmm. And nothing besides the tea. Well, okay, so maybe there are a few things, and I just kind of wrote it from my mind.
There are a lot of things you can explain away.
Yep.
Exactly. This one was not one of them. And I remember because Laura went away for a conference, and it was just me in the house alone for the first time. And our bedroom was downstairs, what's right now our TV room. And I remember being in bed, and I remember something next to me, like a being next to me, like a person next to me. And I think it's Laura, or I think to myself, oh, it's just Laura. And then I snap to, and I realize it can't be Laura. She's away at a conference. So then I look over, and it's this figure. Dark hair, long dark hair, white nightgown. I remember so much of this. And these eyes that are just dark. Like, even though it was night, I just knew it was all dark eyes. I could see no white, to them. And I hold her gaze for what felt like 2 minutes, which actually felt like an eternity if you think about it. And then I snap out of it. I go over and turn on the light on my nightstand, look right back, and there is nothing there. It's like something out of like what you would see in like a scary movie. And then, so suffice to say, I did not sleep well that night.
Didn't you try to put Tinkerbell on the bed with you?
That was the morning after.
Oh, okay.
That was the morning after. And into the evening, because again I was still working, and I bring her up to the bed, and this is usually a no-no. She was always trying to get on the bed.
So wait, you said the morning after. Do you mean the next night, or was it later that morning?
No, well, it was the morning after, and she didn't. I remember this because the morning after I tried getting her back on the bed. Didn't do anything.
Oh, and for clarification, Tinkerbell is a very large black pit bull Labrador mix.
Yes.
Obviously named Tinkerbell.
The name fit her, though.
Of course it did.
No, I remember. This was in the morning. I tried. I didn't really pay a lot of attention because I was running late for work, quite honestly, anyways. And then later that night, I tried again a couple of times.
Because you didn't want to sleep alone.
Because I didn't want to sleep alone. And normally she's aching to get onto the bed, right? Or she had been. Bring her back up. And she looks at that spot, and then she just runs off, okay? And then I bring her back again, and she's just staring at where I saw this figure, and then she peed, like, on the bed. It was like the girl in The Exorcist. She just looked that way and just peed, and then bolted.
And she never did things like that, ever.
She was a good girl.
I thought this was all in one night. I didn't realize it spanned like a 24-hour-ish period.
No, this was a 24-hour-ish period. It happened, the incident, of course, happened at night. Woke up the following morning, although, to be honest, I did not sleep very well. And then tried to get Tinkerbell on the bed, wouldn't do it. It was running late. Try again in the evening, that evening, twice, and that's when, she peed on the bed.
And didn't you then go up to the to spend the night with
No,
my
that
parents.
was another incident.
That was okay.
Yeah.
What was the other incident?
The other incident was when we had 2 lights, right? So like lamps on 2 nightstands. And then at night, again, you were away at a conference, and they just started flashing. It was like something out of Stranger Things, and it was a strange thing. And they just started flashing, and then I was like, "There is something in this house, and I don't know what it is." And it's never happened before or since. Now, funnily enough, like when you were at your last conference, nothing happened, of course.
Yeah. No, but okay, I just need to add like a little funny thing though to that story, because I remember when that happened. So I was in Chicago, so there was a time difference. So I was like asleep, and here in the middle of the night, he had called me. And so I get this voicemail the next day, and it's Ray saying, Laura, something's here. Something's in the house. I gotta go. And I'm just hearing this voicemail, and I'm like, oh my God, is he dead? What happened? And yeah, that was the night that you abandoned the house and you went up to spend the night with my parents, which I don't blame you.
Nope.
Yeah.
We have done that ourselves. We went to a chapter out of the old Ray book, and we did that ourselves in this house. So
I don't know why I didn't do it the first time, to be honest. That was kind of creepy. It was very creepy.
we tend to lie to ourselves and it's like, it's fine. It's just, I was half asleep and I thought I saw somebody, but she wasn't actually there. We would kind of like try to make it go away that way.
Mm-hmm.
You could be a man by staying alone.
I think when the dog reacted poorly is when I kind of knew.
Because that confirms that it wasn't a dream,
Yeah, that I knew something was up.
Yeah.
Well, we need some other stories, though.
So we had really a wide variety of things happen. One of the most common things was a mimic.
Yes.
And we all had heard this. And we would all hear each other's voices coming from different parts of the house, calling names, saying things, whatever. So yeah, I would hear Ray or PJ or Shanna like coming from the attic when they were in class or whatever, And so I remember the very first time it happened, Ray was at choir practice, and I could hear him calling my name from outside. And I was doing the dishes, so I was drying my hands, and I literally went out the side door to greet him because I was so sure he was there. And I was saying to him, like, what are you doing home so early? And I'm looking around, and there's no one there. And then, an hour or so later, he comes home, and he had, he'd been at choir practice that whole time.
Had you ever heard Mimic in the house, Ray?
No, but the Mimic has done its impression of me a couple of times.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember one time when you turned out the light?
Yes. So in the foyer, there is a light that also turns off the upstairs light. And so I noticed it was on, and so I flicked it off, and I heard Ray say, hey, I'm up here. And so I flip it back on, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were downstairs. And then I go into our dining room, and that leads into our living room, which leads into our den, and there's Ray at the computer. And I'm like, you weren't by any chance upstairs and you magically transported yourself, right?
I was like, what are you talking about?
Although I think one of the more interesting times that the Mimic happened was when we had a contractor doing work. And actually they were giving an estimate. They're going through the house and
they're like, this is another
$10,000.
$10,000. So.
No, this time around, like, I don't recall the presence or the Mimic mimic anybody in particular.
It didn't mimic us, but the contractor, what you hear is you hear thump, 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 and kids laughing upstairs in our
From
attic.
the attic.
And the contractor looks at us and says, do you have kids up there?
No, we all heard it.
All three of us were there.
Heard
Yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm. And
oh my.
Yeah.
Then there were children laughing. And then he's like, yeah, right. Are there children up there? And then I remember, I'm like, no, Neil, there are no children up there. But you can go ahead and check.
Be our guest.
Be our guest.
Go right up.
Go
we
upstairs.
don't have any flowers in the attic.
Yeah.
And
Go
he
upstairs.
did not go up, for the record.
Yes. I was like, go upstairs, take a look around, open up the doors. I guarantee you will find no children.
Was this Neil unavailable for contracting work
Actually,
then?
no, he did do the work for us.
You're like, oh, look at my wrist, gotta go.
I know. He was very very good.
Yeah.
We also would have.
Well, we have our own mimic stories.
Oh, go right ahead.
Which is fun. Let's just, I know, we were, at the time, PJ had moved in to one of your bedrooms upstairs because he was in college, and I was just over, we're watching something on his TV. I don't remember, but it was like afternoon, we were just hanging out, and the door was closed, and on the other side of the door, we heard our friend Dan talking, and I looked at PJ and I go, what the heck? And we both said, Dan, what are you doing here?
You're like, are you gonna call before you show up here?
And he's like, hey guys, come on, let me in. And we're like, the door's open. Open the door, there's no Dan. And I'm just like, oh, okay. So that was a mimic. And I had heard your voice throughout the house. And like, that's when I was alone during my spring break, during student teaching, the Berwick had off or whatever. So I knew that there was a mimic in the house. And I'd already heard the stories about Ray's voice when you're doing the dishes. But he had his own issue where he got mad at me.
Well, not mad, but I was like...
annoyed.
I was downstairs and I heard her voice from up in the bedrooms just saying like, hey, can you bring up my chapstick? And at that point, she had like 5 different flavors of chapstick. So I yell... I'm like, I yell up, which one? No answer. So I'm like, fine, I'll just bring them all up. And I walk in the room, I'm like, which flavor do you want? She's like, what are you talking about? I'm like... the flavor of chapstick you asked me to bring. And she's like, I didn't say anything. Oh, right.
we weren't even a face. We're like, okay, whatever, sure. Because you had a story before that, too, like, where we knew that things were happening in the house. Because you had a story where you actually got so scared, you had a baseball bat, I think. You took it downstairs.
Oh.
Yes.
So we knew going in to this house and visiting.
We had heard stories.
We knew that it would be fun. As Ray said, like, I don't know that I didn't believe in it, but I didn't. Until the night that we had Kyle over, that, like...
Yes.
That was scary.
That something was
the mimic was, like, cutesy. Like, we obviously both heard Dan, so, like, okay, whatever, it's a mimic. But anyway, tell your baseball bat story.
So, it's not so different from the story that you actually partied to the first night that like Jen and Kyle were over and all of the doors flew open and there was all this, just crazy stuff happening and we're outside trying to get the indoor cats back in. And I think that was the night you took pictures of all those orbs.
Yes. No, that was a different night.
Was that a different night?
That was later.
I have those photos still.
Do you?
I do.
I'll see them.
There's now that I think about it.
I mean, there's literally hundreds, thousands maybe of orbs.
There are
like they look like
bunch of
snowflakes.
stories.
Crazy.
We have a lot of stories.
Oh yeah. This is just the.
But anyway, baseball
beginning.
bat.
So at the time, our dog was a puppy, and he was doing, how dogs have different barks for different things, He was doing his someone's at the door bark, that real high-pitched, alert bark. And so, I mean, it was like midnight. And so I'm like, okay, this is either the cops because there's some kind of a problem or mom and dad because there's an emergency, like something bad is happening. So that's when I grabbed the baseball bat. Of course, Ray is like oblivious. And I don't know why I didn't make you come down with me because I was 100% sure.
I'll take care of it.
Right.
No,
I'll be sleeping.
Sleeping,
yeah. Sleeping, yeah. No, I was 100% sure I was going to meet somebody because I thought it was either a cop, my parents with an emergency, or an intruder. So I grabbed this baseball bat and I'm turning on the lights as I'm creeping down the stairs and going through the foyer into the dining room and into the kitchen where the dog is. And again, kind of a tie back to the basement, there's sort of a corner area where there's a basement door and then there's was it perpendicular to it? No.
Yeah.
At the corner.
At a right angle.
At a right
like
angle.
Sharing a corner.
Yes, is this outside door that leads to this wooded area on the side of our house. So the dog's in the corner. I can't tell if he's barking at the basement or at the door. And so he's all worked up. Meanwhile, I mentioned our cats. We have several. They are all in the kitchen, and they are all poofed up. And one of them is on top of the refrigerator, and they are all of the animals are completely worked up, and every single cabinet and fridge and freezer door in the kitchen are wide open.
That story I told my students, and I'm like, and the basement said, keep door closed. So what did you learn? You listen to the red letters that you see.
I mean, maybe I should just go down and close it.
Lock it.
I remember for a while you tried to make us believe it. That it's fine. the cabinets aren't opening. It's gravity. Like the kitchen floor is a little sideways, and so the refrigerator door is just opening because of gravity. I'm like,
the things people say to
make it to
convince themselves.
It is true. Yeah. I mean, I think it was the day though, PJ, when you and I were standing in the kitchen, and like literally we're like 3 feet apart.
Yeah.
You know,
we were literally on opposite sides of a stove.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
it was
less than 3
right.
feet.
It was the stove.
It was the hutch. It was that green hutch that I had.
Okay.
And so on the hutch, I mean, again, another little tie back to tea. I had these jars of flavored tea, and I had 4 of them. And I remember one of them from the center, just out of nowhere, just fume, like
it literally hopped 1.5 feet forward off of the hutch, bounced on like the top of the hutch, like the countertop, and then onto the floor.
Yeah, it just kind of hopped off, and I mean, nothing else was disturbed. It wasn't like we were jumping around or causing a ruckus. There was no big truck that was knocking it off. We were standing there talking, and all of a sudden, this one jar from the center just fumed right off.
But my favorite was our reaction to it, which is, did that just hop off there? Yeah. Oh.
Okay.
And then
just pick it up and you put it back.
But it's validating.
There was a time too, Shanna, that I remember. I forget if it was in the den or the dining room, but remember the speakers,
the radio.
Yes.
I tell this story to my students too.
Please go right ahead.
Well, that must have been, I was student teaching, so because that's when I was like, maybe we should move out. Like I was kind of done because then you did research on the house, and I was just creeped out. So I had made a cake, right? And we were going to eat cake and whatever. But I heard like a staticky sound. And then there was a radio playing. And it wasn't like music. There was like an introduction like sound. Yeah. And then it was a baking show. Like I could hear someone saying, don't forget to pull out your whatever.
But so very staticky.
Yeah, very staticky.
Yeah.
And so I was walking around trying to figure out where the heck it was coming from. And I'm like, I'm not going to make this freaking roast. I don't care. Shut up, whoever you are, Paula Dean. But like, I was freaking out about it. And so I went and I found you. I'm like, Laura, do you have a radio playing? And you usually went through all the speakers, whatever. And then I was home alone like the next day, and it happened again at the exact same time. And I realized there was like this like recording, or what is it called when you're like, when there's a ghost, but they kind of, that loop kind of idea.
Residual.
So, that residual song, yeah. So like someone must have like in the 50s or whatever tuned into this radio station daily to get ideas for cooking, because they used to have that back on the radio, back in the day.
So it was like an old, because I wasn't around for this. It was like old timey.
Definitely old timey.
Yeah,
because another time we heard it was like 50s big band era music, right?
Well, and I mean, maybe you weren't there for that. Maybe I was alone, but I did find the speakers that were making the sounds.
Oh, did you?
Oh.
Yeah. They weren't plugged into anything.
Oh, good.
And this is pre-Bluetooth.
Of course.
This is back in the early 2000s. This was pre-Bluetooth.
And for a while, you said, well, your windows were open. It might be Chelsea next door practicing. I'm like, listen, Chelsea is not in charge of a radio food show from the 50s, sweetie. Try again.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it was when it was playing some kind of like a big band music.
Yeah.
What were the old? I'm just curious. Were the old speakers?
No, they were our modern speakers. They were the type that plugged into a computer. So that's how I know they weren't plugged into anything. Like they needed the USB or whatever, to.
That's into your telephone stories then too.
Oh yes.
Those are crazy stories.
I was so bad for you, right, with those.
I felt bad for me too. I felt bad for me too when the house decided to call 911 and the cops showed up.
Well, I think we have to preface it also by saying that for weeks leading up to it, we have to go back even further. We had disconnected our landline because at that point in time, cell towers were a thing. We were using our cell phones, so no need for a landline anymore. And so we disconnected it, and for weeks, our disconnected landline kept calling my parents. It kept showing up on their caller ID. And they kept, answering it, and they said...
When they would call us back.
And then they would call us back, but on the cell phone being like, did you just call? And we're like, no. And so I shouldn't have been surprised when one day I get a knock on the door. And mind you, I've spent the day cleaning, so I'm a mess. I'm like in my grungy clothes. Like, this is the most inopportune moment for this to happen.
Always.
But I get a knock on my door, and there's a uniformed police officer standing there. And I'm like, oh, God, now what? And so I open the door. Hello, officer. And he said, ma'am, are you in trouble? And I'm like, no. And he said, well, we've had a 911 call here, and it was just a woman. It was a woman crying. And I said, I think you must have the wrong address. Certainly
I cry over housework too, but
it wasn't me.
Have you seen the size of this place?
So I'm trying to tell him that it wasn't me. And then, again, I was like, well, maybe you do have the wrong house. What number was it? And he told me the number, which was our disconnected landline. And I explained to him that the landline had been disconnected. I said, maybe somebody else has that number. And he looked so confused. And I'm just like, everything's correct, except I'm not in any trouble. And it was okay. We, took a quick look around, and everything was fine. And I think you were home for this, right? You came downstairs?
Yes. Yeah, I was home for this.
And
I remember.
He's giving Ray the side
I
eye.
remember the looks of judgment that I got when he arrived, and I was like, I know exactly what he's thinking.
Were you there the second time that it happened?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
How do you
forget? Like that's what I remember is Ray.
There are things that I forget about, like the speaker story.
Yeah. So
Ray was worried
they all
that
kind
he's
of
gonna
blend
put
together
handcuffs
after a
the
while.
Yeah,
second
they
time.
do. They do.
But the second story is important because poor Ray was expecting handcuffs at that point.
So.
The second story?
Yeah.
It was just a variation on the first.
That is
except
true.
Just, more looks.
Yeah.
Didn't they take you aside and talk
They
to
took
both?
her
Took me
aside.
aside to are you really okay kind of a thing. And it's like, yes, you have the wrong number. It's not me. So yeah, our whatever it was, this disconnected landline kept calling people.
And crying.
And
a female
crying. Yes.
It's important.
Now, when do you remember when it would call mom and dad?
It was like hang-ups for them. Like they would hear a second or two of silence, and then it would hang up. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it was just test runs. I don't know what was happening. Sorry, Lola's breathing.
She's getting nervous now.
She is. There was another interesting thing that happened, and usually I really didn't like to interact with it because that only encourages it.
Yes.
So, but I was in the shower, and I hear very slowly and very deliberately 3 knocks. Just.
That sounds really good, by the way.
Yes. And I ignore it, and then I hear it again. And I ignore it, and one more time. And then I'm like, fine, I know you're there. I'm in the shower. Leave me alone. And it knocks again. And then the cabinet door swings open.
Nope.
Nope. And I'm just like, oh man. I mean, and it's so funny because other people are like, we would have fled the house. I mean, they would have fled the house when the tea happened, and I was just irritated at this point.
Well, and I think something that people forget to mention too, because we're in the same boat. When we tell our stories, and people are like, "This podcast, why are you still there?" There's a point where you can't afford to leave. The biggest thing for us, as our issues started to progress, we literally could not afford to leave this house. We're teachers, so that's part of it. And we're working at one of the
even
lowest,
for a night to go to a hotel would be hard to do.
It would have broken us. We
yeah.
couldn't pay bills then. Because we worked at the time, the school we worked at was the lowest paid in our union by far, or the IU, by far, we're the lowest paid. We couldn't afford to leave. So it's you
and
put
we
up
were in
with
the
it.
same boat because we're in a fixer-upper.
You have one of the original mansions to our area.
Yeah,
it's
it's an early one.
humongous.
Yeah.
So no, people don't. I think when you're in this situation, it makes more sense to you. Oh yeah, you physically and monetarily cannot leave. Yeah. And if you want to own the house, you're gonna make your stand. It has to be your house, which is what we all ended up doing for our own situations. But I think an important story for your house to tell: the night that I became a believer that your house had something like some kind of negative energy. The mimic was cute. It was just cute. The radio was cute. But this story predates me living there, I think, because we had Kyle over.
It was one of the first times we actually
met him and interacted.
It was probably like we were just having the family.
It was
over
a meet and greet kind of thing.
So this predates me even like us moving in. Was that night Kyle had gone out to your kitchen to get a Coke, and all the cabinets are open and all the doors are open.
Yeah, and Kyle comes back in and he's like, "Should your door be open?"
And I think at that point you were just kind of like, no.
I know,
you're just exhausted then at that point. And so you're like, we should make sure that the cats are inside because you had only indoor cats at the time, you know. And that's the door that's perpendicular to the basement door. So same room, same kitchen, right? Didn't change. Yep. And so you start counting up and you realize that all the cats are missing, right?
Yeah, they all got out.
And so somehow PJ and I got elected to go out in your creepy woods.
I think we just ran out.
Yeah, because I think I was still searching the house.
No, we
for
put
the
coats on. We did not run out. We put coats on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think I was still looking in the house.
You were searching in the house because that's important for our story later.
Yeah.
But like the woods beside your house aren't that big. You know, you don't own it's a sliver. Really,
we should tell the story about those woods after this.
We have to because the girl crying on the phone. But like to put in context, do you know the square footage of it? It's not that big.
The lot next to us.
Yeah,
it can't be more than like 100 feet wide.
Yeah, it's
because there's a ravine that goes down to the next.
Yeah, I know our lot is a third of an acre.
So that one might be a half acre, but even that's probably a lot for what it is.
Yeah, I'd say maybe it's
so
like
the way the property is lined up is it's their house and then a strip of woods
that leads back into a larger
into a larger piece of the woods, and then there's another house on the other side of the strip, and this strip is, like I said, like it's 100 feet
street.
Wide, maybe 200, but it's narrow. You can see straight through it. But once you get into it...
And I think that's the important thing, is like we call it the woods because when you walk into it...
It's not just trees.
No, it feels huge.
And it encloses you somehow.
It feels like you're encompassed by it. Yeah. Like, that's why I tell my students, like, and now, of course, we're going out in the middle of the freaking night, and it's cold.
Windy, too,
and
it was like a January night.
I think it was November. It doesn't matter.
November.
All that matters is it was ice cold outside, middle of the night, and the house butts up against the main street in our town. So, like, it is a
heavy traffic
road. So you'd think you're safe. We start on that end, and we're going to work our way backwards to the woods, the strip of woods. We walk in, and it felt like, for PJ and me, like a door had closed behind us. Like the trees just kind of enclosed us in. And he has a flashlight. We walk up to the ravine to look down your neighbor's lawn, and he's like, checking, right?
Sweeping back and forth with the light.
And to our right, which is physically impossible, we hear someone walking towards us through leaves. There are no leaves there because it's nothing.
It's a drop off into the road.
Off, yeah. So we could hear where it's coming from, but I'm like, PJ, do you hear that? And do you remember what you said to me?
And I was just like, I heard it and I was ignoring it. I was like, just look for the cats.
Just look for the cats?
Look for the cats.
I got so sick of that. I'm like, you're freaking cats. So anyway, he continues to sweep, and then to our left, we hear a little bell jingle. And I go, PJ, do you hear that? And he says,
just look for the cats.
And at that point, I turn back at him and I'm really mad. But if you've seen the Blair Witch Project, I should point out that PJ has a beanie hat on, and he's wearing a corduroy jacket, and his back's to me, and he's sweeping his flashlight. So all I see is him doing this, rocking back and forth, which is like the last scene of Blair Witch Project. And I'm like, oh my God, we're going to die in here. We got to get out. We're going to die.
Heck with the cats.
I'm like, we're not. But then we heard that bell. We look over, and it's Prancer crawling along the ground.
Like army crawling, this cat.
This cat we called him Stegosaurus because he was so...
He had a tiny little head and this big fat body. And
long legs, which is why he was Prancer.
And once I go, Prancer, is that you? And once he realizes it's a human, he lunged up on me, attached his claws into my leather coat, and I could not remove him. And I remember looking at you and I go, we got one, we're good. Let's get out of here. Because
And at that point, we hear Laura saying, like, hey, guys, come on back in. We got them all. And so we
I'm like, no, you don't, because I was kind of attached to my leather jacket.
And we turn around and we see you through the window in the dining room. Like,
talking to Kyle.
Yeah, talking to Kyle. And we're like, oh, no.
PJ, did you hear that? Look for the cats. Sorry.
Yeah.
Look for the cats. So we continue. I don't know what we did. We continued walking through the woods, and I don't even know why we did that. To look for the cats, obviously. And we got up to where the English garden is, and Laura actually had come out at that point and had met us there.
Yeah.
And I was like, take your stupid cat. And I'm like ripping him off. He ruined my coat. Remember, I was so mad he ruined my coat that night, and I love that leather jacket. Just put that in there.
You did get into one at Gettysburg, like a year later.
Listen.
It was a sacrifice for Prancer's mental health.
Physical well-being,
and
too.
that.
And so I was like, I'm done. I hate this house. I'm going back inside, which hopefully
Who knew
is
that?
safe.
What, a year later you were moved in?
I
A
know.
year and a half later?
All cats were found, though.
Yes, they were
Well,
found.
you and Laura decided to continue on, and you found a shed in the middle of your woods. Isn't that where you found another cat? Wasn't there like some kind of shed?
No, there are pipes that stick up
Pipes.
out of
That's
the
okay.
woods.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
It's totally cool.
Yeah,
Normal.
I mean, and they're, but
For
it's
breathing.
weird. Like they're
For breathing, yeah.
But there's like a, I don't know how to describe it, but it's more like
funny.
a railing.
little
It wasn't
funny.
like a, I mean, it's metal, but it's in the shape of like an upside down U, and I don't know if it was.
Oh,
like,
it's a pipe.
I guess, but like what its purpose was, I
Yeah,
have no
metal
idea.
pipe that
As
comes
Ray
out,
said, for
turns.
breathing.
Yeah, and just goes right back into the ground.
Yeah.
Can't explain it.
For breathing.
Yeah.
So all cats were found.
Yes.
One leather coat was destroyed. Just gonna put that in there.
But I have
I
to
never
say
went in those woods again.
that, you know what, though, whatever it was in the house was also quite a prankster. There were many, countless almost times where things would go missing. I
That
mean,
happened at our house too.
And
I
this
hate
is another
that.
one where it's super easy to be like, oh, I misplaced that, you know? But
Yeah.
one time in particular, it was your wedding ring. You
It's
remember
my
this?
wedding ring, yeah.
Go ahead.
I knew where I left my wedding ring this time around. Absolutely knew. And
Yeah,
then
he
I
was so
looked-
sure. He's like, it was
There's another-
on
it's
the
actually
bedside
another-
table.
Everything seems to like revolve around like the bedroom. I
Yeah,
don't, you know,
bedroom
like
was
it's
Someone's
It's
probably
really
asking
weird.
why you take your wedding band off.
Well,
Good
I
question.
can't remember, but it was definitely off. It was definitely on the nightstand. Went around to do stuff.
I just want to point out that Laura is glaring at you. So.
Oh well,
Awkward.
he's got to be past this because this isn't even. This is obviously
Oh, yeah.
not the
He
original
lost
one.
it for good,
Yes,
like,
and then
eons
the
ago.
replacements I have lost. So
We just
I've
buy him little
literally
cheap
gone
$5
through, like,
rings, and
30 different rings. At
he
this
takes
point.
it off to sleep. He'll take it off to play piano. Like
I understand
Yeah,
that.
I'm
though.
a
But in this
lefty,
particular
too.
case, he's like, I know I put it on the bedside table. I remember it, and it was, we woke up like that morning. It should have been right there, and so we're
I was
hunting
like,
for it.
Yeah, I was just so ticked off. I'm like, look, I don't know what you're up to. I just want my ring back. Will you please just give me my ring back?
Because we had searched for a few hours at this
Yes.
point. Like we really were tearing the place apart.
And wouldn't you know,
We did
like,
find it.
within like 5 minutes of just my frustration manifesting as such, the ring was back on the nightstand.
Oh, but you know what? I'm actually remembering
Yeah.
a whole different story because there were a few times where his ring went missing. And this time that I'm remembering, I found it inside the refrigerator, inside a paper bag.
That really did happen.
Yeah.
So bizarre.
It's like that to me, like I could understand, like, okay, you missed it on the nightstand, which was impossible because like we were searching for
Yeah.
hours and looked at that nightstand a dozen times. But yeah, I mean, it does not end up inside a paper bag inside the refrigerator. Like that does not happen by accident.
It just takes me back
That's
to all the times that something in this house,
Took all
took
your
things.
stuff.
Because we had a very similar story, I'm sure you remember,
Mm-hmm.
where my mom had bought me that watch, that I used to wear all the time. And I was getting ready for work, and I always laid it on my nightstand because I'm organized. There's my glasses, my watch, and then my phone sat in this like little chair. And I because there's a plug that would go into it. And so I put my glasses on, I go get ready, and my watch isn't where it's supposed to be. And so I'm like in the bathroom looking. I go back to my nightstand. It's still not there. And PJ says, what's wrong? And I said, my watch is missing. And he's really trying to help me find it. He's looked all over the nightstand and everywhere too. And then I go, I just really want my watch. Like, it's so important to me. I just wish it would just show up. And then boom, it's back on the nightstand, right where it's supposed to be. Yeah. And there's no way that we could have missed that because we were literally right there, looking. So it's one of many times that things had happened. And I remember asking one time in this house, because I never wanted to interact either, just because, they say it gets worse. But I was looking for a particular onesie for the time Eli was baby. And I said, I don't want to talk to you, but I need this onesie for this picture I'm taking, for these baby pictures. And then it just showed up laying on top of all the clothes in the basement. And I'm just like...
In a place you've already looked a dozen times.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
So I was just... Yep. It's just annoying, honestly.
It does become irritating. Yeah. Like, after a while, you stop getting weirded out and you just get mad,
Just knock it off, man.
Right? Like, if you're going to do this,
you're living your free.
Dust or do something useful,
Like, it made you tea, though. We never got tea.
Only the one time. Only the one time. Then it was throwing jars of tea around.
You make the floor, dirt on the floor disappear? Yes. That's what I would love for the ghosts to do.
Yeah. Turn on the Roomba while you're at it,
I don't have one of those even now. Well, you should tell the backstory of your house then, or the woods.
But we were talking about pipes in the ground for breathing and things like that, but no one understands the context.
I don't think they're really there for breathing.
Well, no, but that's what we were joking about.
I think they are. No. I'm sorry.
Well, they very well might be, but it forms like, what do you call it? Like an upside down U, an arch.
Oh, no, it picks up right. You can hear them right away.
Okay. Yeah. So you're just breathing your own air in. So, I mean, if you have a specific purpose, I mean, yes, I'm sure that's effective.
Maybe it's a marker to know, like, where the person is.
I don't know.
It's just weird. It's just weird. So our next door neighbor had lived in his home for 40, 50 years at that point. Grizzled old guy, Bill, and, actually it was the day we were moving in. Literally, the day we were moving in, boxes in our arms, carrying it, and he stops us, to introduce himself, and he says, well, I think you should know that the last 5 couples who've lived in this house have all divorced. And we're like, great. Welcome to the neighborhood.
No, thanks for the good news.
Yeah, usually, like,
Super
when you
duper.
have a new neighbor, you, like, get them, like, a welcome basket.
Yeah.
No, that's
Can I have my fruitcake instead, or my Jell-O mold?
Now, we did know for certain that the couple that we bought the house from had divorced. That we had met them, and we knew them. And interestingly, too, in our conversations, as we were buying the house, one of the former owner, the husband, ex-husband, had very specifically said to us that he had tried to purchase the wooded lot on the opposite side because he wanted to put in a driveway there, but that the owner refused to sell.
And again, you can't build a house.
No,
you can barely put a driveway that he wanted to do.
It's so steep, and the woods, and it's narrow. It just, I guess you could build a tiny home if you really, really wanted to.
That's true. The she shed.
Yeah. So we start looking into the history of the house, and our neighbor did tell us more. He told us the story of how back in the 70s, there was a professor at the local university who had a wife and 2 daughters. And
no, they had kids. I know that part. Okay.
2 daughters. And one night, in the middle of the night, Bill's wife wakes him up because she hears this strange buzzing sound. So Bill looks out the window, and our house, probably should have mentioned this at the beginning, it's a fairly large Victorian-style house.
Fairly large?
It's fairly large.
It's humongous, but continue.
Yeah, it was close to 3,000 square feet, I guess.
That's just the main areas.
Yeah,
of
the attic
house.
and the basement, which is the basement's the full length of the house.
And the attic spans the perimeter.
Yeah, so it's a big house is what I'm getting at. But anyway, Bill said that in this middle of the night that every light from the attic to the basement was on, and this professor was vacuuming his car. And that was the buzzing sound that had woken up Bill's wife. And Bill, kind of went over the next day just to say hello or whatever. And it turns out that the professor's wife was gone to visit family. And Bill never saw her again. And Bill was told that they were divorced and whatever. And then later, the professor sold the home. But to this very day, he is still alive. And he still owns the wooded lot. Jeez. The lot that he refused to sell to the guy that we bought the house from.
What about the 2 children?
As I understand it, one lives overseas.
Okay.
And one lives, I think, in Philadelphia now.
So they're alive.
They are alive. Yes. Because
I was concerned.
Yes. And I had actually, we had a pipe burst, and I was able to get in touch with one of the daughters. And so I was able to pick her brain about some things. Unfortunately, her mom did not come up, and I couldn't really bring it up in a nice way.
So, how's your mother?
I did try to be like, do you have any pictures of the house, like when you were kids? And I don't know. It felt weird to ask, so
Allegedly,
I never did ask.
Her mom lives maybe half an hour away from us.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where?
You told me this.
Oh.
Near where you work.
Well, you may need to edit this out.
Oh.
You're ruining the mystique.
Sorry.
All right, so
never mind.
The mom lived in Lewisburg, according to the daughter, and they shared custody.
What?
So yeah, so it apparently was fake, and
interesting.
I know, it's according to the daughter.
Well, according to the daughter.
Yeah, it's true. So,
who vacuums their car in the middle of the night?
Exactly.
And why is there someone calling on your phone that's defunct? Crying.
Well, there's definitely something that was happening in the house. I can't explain what all that was. And so what else? So then we did years later we went to a I shouldn't say years later, years ago, we went to a psychic. So, and I think we've told you about the psychic visit. But we went there, and she was really interesting. Do you want to talk about the psychic visit? I've been doing a lot of talking.
No, you do it.
All right. So
I don't remember this story at all.
Oh, really?
I know you went to a psychic, but I don't remember anything about what happened.
Yeah.
There's a funny. Well, you tell it.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say the one funny thing that I remember is that she had predicted. She was like, you are either going to adopt a little girl or you've already adopted a little girl. And this little girl is going to have a kind of ethnic name. And I can just see her energy and everybody's going to love her. It's just, you should just see her and her spirit is just so cute is what she said. And we said to her, I was like, well, we have a black pug named Lola. That's kind of sounds like a foreign name. And she's like, no, I definitely see this as being more of a daughter energy and not like a pet energy. And I'm like, no, I think you got it right the first time. But no, go ahead.
Well, it's definitely our doctor.
That was the only funny thing I had to say.
Yeah. So we went to the psychic, and I will say, I won't go into everything that she talked about, but she definitely knew things about us that she would not have known. Like, she knew that I had, for example, an uncle who had passed away who was very religious, and my Uncle Rob had passed away not that long before.
I have to ask, did you make an appointment or anything, or was it a walk-in?
We made an appointment.
Mm-hmm. See, do some research.
Mm-hmm. You should meet with her. She's good.
No, they do research.
No, there's no way she could have known really about. It's certainly not about his background, but and then there were other things that she was pretty specific on. But in terms of the house, she told us that there were 3 spirits. She said there was a man and his dog, and that there was a woman. And she said the woman was in a white nightgown and had either fallen or been pushed down a set of stairs. She couldn't tell us which set of stairs, whether it was basement or upstairs or whatever, but that was as she understood it. And she said that the, that by and large, that these spirits liked us and that, we wouldn't have any, major problems. But she suggested for anyone who needs to get rid of spirits that, again, you don't want to interact with it. And that what you should do is, even when you're not at home, play things like Disney movies or pop music, because it creates an atmosphere that ghosts don't want to be in. And so we would do that. I mean, honestly, like, who wants to listen to Britney Spears all day,
Right here.
So we did that, and also Ray went
to exercise the demon.
They put on some Vanilla Ice.
There you go.
Baby. There we go.
Spice Girls.
Hey, that is a treasure.
I'm sorry.
And
Too far, Ray.
Too far.
And then also, she gave us instructions to sage the house, which Ray did. And also we had our priest come over and do a house blessing. So we kind of did lots of things all at one time. And since that time, which was quite a few years ago, we haven't had any noticeable activity.
Which is good.
Yes. Yeah.
We had similar situations here, and it was you who had suggested the sage stick for us, too.
It was your sage stick. We borrowed it.
Yeah, that's true. Multiple use.
Well, that was an interesting situation, too, because ours was not as easy to take care of because, when we talk about our story, ours is definitely demonic, unfortunately. But we have so many stories about this house that I just felt like your stories would be great as like a little connection, like a little mini series, because you only do so much D&D. I mean, D&D is awesome, but I think it's cool to get the background of like us and stuff that goes on.
Yeah.
So something that's different about me compared to you three, I think, is that after the events that we've gone through, I'm drawn to horror movies like a moth to flame, because I want vindication of someone else who gets that feeling of being physically alone in the house, but you're not alone in the house and you know that. And so I'm waiting for a movie that really captures it. And I'm just actively searching for something. And like the first 20 minutes of Paranormal Activity gets it pretty nicely. Where like the spookiest thing that happens is the sound of keys falling to the floor in the middle of the night, and it's like, whoa, no, but like that's the reality of it, and then it goes into Hollywood nonsense
when you tell
after
your
that.
Stories, it's like you tell all of these stories of all these major events that happened, and then you have kids who say, "Well, why are you living there?" Dude, it was over a series of years. You'd have like your watch go missing, then like you're good for a month or two, then your shoes go missing, and like, oh, you could have misplaced it. It becomes coincidental, and you can while it away, except for the teeth thing. I don't know how you.
Well, I never felt like unsafe in the house. Well, yeah. I mean, I felt like my privacy was a little bit compromised. I mean, if you're climbing into bed with me,
yes,
that's
or taking a shower.
Yeah.
Maybe
it was more about comforting you while I was away.
About that.
We felt unsafe at the end, but we never, for most of the time. You more so. But
yeah, see, you can't tell.
I never felt alone, though. That's the big thing for me, is I never felt alone.
And he mentioned, like, movies that, like, you want to watch horror movies because you want that vindication. I can't watch Insidious. That first, like, section where the mom's playing the piano and there's that sound over the big monitor.
Yeah.
Like, I physically have PTSD because of what happened when I was here with Sophie alone with Bandit, our dog at the time, and the sounds over the monitor. Like, it takes me back to that moment. Like, I never really felt safe after that, especially. I would
straight up one of the coolest horror movies ever, though.
Shut up. No.
Seriously.
I wouldn't know. But then, like, of course, the basement, when we realized I realized it was demonic and not just a ghost, because the shadow figure. And I think again, like when you're stuck in that situation where you can't afford to go anywhere else, you make do. And at the time it was that loop kind of idea where it was bad. It would get bad about what? Like
every 6 months.
September-ish. But it was like
it was always around October. Yeah, like September leading into October is when it got the worst.
Yeah, and like by like mid-November it was over. It was like we knew that we could get through that and we'd be okay.
Because we have a series of videos, series. It's just 2 videos, but they were a year and 5 days apart. Yeah. It was October 25th and October 29th or something like that of 2 sequential years.
Things that had happened.
Yeah, and it was always end of October when it happened.
Because like little things would happen, like my Facebook memories pop up and it says like, "Oh, here's a fun time the ghost again took a pair of flip flops from Rose Sophie or whatever." Like there were things that happened that were like mimicry or whatever,
but just annoying.
So I knew that if we could get to like mid-November, if we could just make it to then, it was fine. Like that's my brain was like after once Christmas season comes, we're good to go, And so I kind of just let it, and the kids weren't being hurt until we realized that something was going on. And that's like when I'm like, nope, call the priest, we're done,
Yeah.
Any more stories from your house, though?
None that I
think we hit all the big ones.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's, and then there were, there were a lot of them that just sort of repeated, like the missing things, the mimics, the things moving across rooms, the lights flickering.
The mimic situation happened like a few times.
Oh,
it's so funny for me to talk about this because, like I said before, I consider myself. Well, no, I don't know if I said this before, but it's hard for me to admit that this happened.
Sure,
I feel like I hear me talking sometimes, and I'm like,
because then you're kind of
like
admitting,
a crazy person.
Yeah, exactly. You're admitting like that. Either you're insane or something unexplainable is happening.
Right.
Neither is good.
So there's like that dissonance, like in my head, like what I witnessed and what I believe is possible, or you know. And when I have no explanation, then I feel like I don't know, almost like I've gone crazy or something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, PJ mentioned earlier, like he's waiting for a movie that will showcase like that true feeling of being alone. I have to say there is one that I love watching that because I love scary stories. Even with all this going on, I've always loved horror and fantasy. But the Bathsheba story,
The Conjuring,
the original Conjuring. Like when all those kids are there and like they're playing the.
I don't think they.
I've never seen it.
Okay.
My gosh, we need to see that with Ray.
We should.
For those that don't know, I'm
So preface for anyone who hasn't seen The Conjuring, like the other two at this table here, where most horror movies, like when things happen, there's a period to breathe afterwards, and then things ramp up again, and then a period to breathe again. Once things start happening, it just increases and increases and increases, and it just keeps going. Like
it's a true example of rising action. Like it just keeps building up that.
Yeah, there's no time to breathe once it starts. It's just crazy.
And that's how I felt like with your house and then moving here, because there's a time when the kids are playing a game where like I've never played this game in my life, so watching these kids play it, like I don't
remember this.
It's in the commercials, but like that you blindfold them or whatever, and you can only find them by a series of claps, right?
Yeah, it's like Marco Polo, but you're clapping.
Yeah, so I'm explaining it terribly, but again, I've never played it.
You're thinking of the orphanage.
No. I'm actually thinking of something that happened in your house.
Oh, great, thank you. So in any case, there's a part where like they're at this like landing to what is the basement, and there's a. And that is how I felt in your house of the mimic. Yeah. And that's how I felt in this house. Just that like that feeling of waiting, that expectation, but like
waiting
not a positive.
To pop out, yeah.
Yeah, you're just waiting for it. Because I knew like as soon as September 1st, once back to school would happen, that things were going to ramp up. And like, so I was waiting for that kind of thing to happen.
Yeah. No, and I think that you're right too. Like even in our house, I think there was definitely a desire for whatever it was to be noticed. And so when we would ignore it, like there was one time where I was down in the basement doing laundry and, I started up, I turn around, I walk away, everything shuts off. And I turn around and I reset the plug, like the socket. Yeah. On the electrical plug. And everything starts up again. I turn around, shuts off again. Same thing happens a third time. And then I just am like, fine, I know you're here. Can I please just do my laundry? And then I press the button and start it up, no problem. You know, I mean, again, is that coincidental? Could be. Could absolutely be. Mm-hmm. But, you know, it's like, but you almost have that feeling of like, once I was recognized, like, I know you're here. That's like what it wanted was this attention. And maybe because we did the staging and we're like, just go. We're going to put on like Christina Aguilera for you. You're not going to
be
like
a genie in a bottle, sweetheart.
Yeah, you know, whatever. That maybe that's what finally clued it in to be like, oh, maybe they actually don't want me here. So, no, but the thing I was thinking of was when you had the, oh gosh, it wasn't like the Wii, but it recognized like
the Kinect.
The Kinect. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's your story. I won't take it. But I was here when it happened. So.
Oh, were you?
Oh, yeah.
It happened a couple times. The first time it happened, the game Destiny came out. The creators of Halo was their first game that wasn't Halo in 20-some years, and everyone is fighting for codes to like play the game early. And so on my phone, no, laptop, because smartphones weren't a thing at that point, or not common. So I'm on my laptop, like on Reddit, searching for codes because people are just giving them away. And all of a sudden, like, my Xbox turns on and starts like moving through the menus. And because when the Kinect like would sense a hand, like a circle would appear where your hand was, kind of like a mouse cursor, and I could see it like just swiping, you know, across all the menus, and then like it would hold on something to open up a window, and then it would close out of that and open up a different app, and then close out of that, and I'm just watching all this happen, like not knowing what to do, and so, you know, I'd turn that off and.
I'd be like, hey, order me a pizza.
What was your story, though? What did...
Eli was playing
It was the Kinectimals game, right?
Yes. And so Eli was playing a game, but there were 2 figures playing.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
There were 2 of them.
It was the Kinectimals.
Yeah. My friend was playing a game at his house once, and it's a rowboat game. And you know, he's rowing down the river, and all of a sudden, like, there's someone sitting in the back of his boat with him. Oh. And he's like, oh my god, like, do I turn around and see what's behind me? And he's just like rowing, like ignoring that there's someone else in the boat with him. And then he turns around, it's his dog.
That happened here too, because they have the same River Rapids game.
Yeah.
And it was a cat, I think it was Toby or someone was in the boat. But no, the Kinectimal thing. It was right, because we were sitting. It couldn't have been us because we were not even like in the screen.
Oh yeah, we were out of because we were on the couch. We were talking, and I remember Eli was like doing his little thing over, you know, in front of the TV, and then you pointed out, and like, what is that? And I'm like, yeah, why are there 2? And they weren't like, it wasn't like a shadow. They were doing different things.
Yep, it was enjoying it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I always think of that story. I never think of your Destiny story. I think of that one. But
I must have not been there for that one.
Well, because you'd already told me that it had been taken, it's been taken control. So I was like, it's fine. This is just what happens at our house. Ignore it. It'll go away. Anyway, more tea, right? Like, you start ignoring it because it's just easier.
Well, people have like started using Kinects to see, like, for ghost hunting.
Oh.
Because what a Kinect is it shoots out thousands of lasers, and it tracks like the distance of things to the laser. So if you push your hand forward towards the Kinect, it knows that laser just got that much shorter, and so you tie that to night vision, and you can see the lasers through the night vision camera. So if something goes through it, you can see the lasers bend when something goes through it.
I do not want to see that. I don't want to see it in my house.
They did it in one of the Paranormal Activities too. Yeah.
Interesting. I was going to mention that, but never mind. It's interesting. Like, I have no interest in seeing real ghost stuff. I like watching like the reenactment stuff on TV. I like watching scary movies. But ever since being in this house, I'm kind of like, whatever you say, I believe you. I'm not even going to question it. I believe, but I don't want to talk about it. Like,
No, I need it. I need to see more.
That vindication.
Mm-hmm.
No, thank you. I want, knock on wood, everything to stay the same. It's very nice. Well, I can't wait to tell our stories because, like, just the well alone and just...
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about this as we're talking. You know, the basement is where a lot of that stuff happened because that's where the well is, and that's where I was shut down the basement stairs, and that's where I saw that shadow figure. I think that's also why I was never so, like, gung-ho, let's get the basement fixed up, because I have done everything else in this house. You know, we've gotten every room done. I put all that flooring upstairs. I have done so much. Hopefully it looks different too. It looks nice.
Very much.
A lot of work to this house because you lived here as a kid. We bought the house from my in-laws a long time ago. Attic is all done. But I never wanted to do the basement. Now part of it was there's a lot of crap down there. But I think I just couldn't go down there. Yeah. After that shadow figure happened, I didn't do laundry. I was all people, you can go down that basement. I'm not going down there, you know. It's only now that, like, I don't have a fear of going down there to do laundry. And we just painted it this summer. We've lived here for over a decade.
Yeah.
You know, and the house is, but we had it exercised before our youngest was born. So, like, that just shows that, like, it took me that long to get down there.
We've been here since 2009.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Oh, I get it. I still don't go down to my basement.
Yeah. We have zombie spiders, so I don't have that.
Not anymore.
Fun fact, there is an HBO series based on a video game coming out about that fungus taking over humans.
Oh.
Written by the guy who wrote Chernobyl.
That's literally a little too close to home.
Yeah, pretty literally. I don't know if every single spider is gone. I hope so. I haven't been down there in a while.
Check all the cracks.
Yeah. Need you to come paint our basement next.
You have dirt floor, so joke's on you. Lay some concrete.
They're not all dirt, though.
There's one area that has been concreted.
It's the concrete is where your washer dryer was.
Yeah.
That was it. The rest of it was dirt.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a little different because when you got the sump pump in, I think they concreted at least the initial. We'll have to take a look again.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm good. I don't need
That
to
means
go
going
down
back down there.
Yeah, let's avoid that.
So what did they think? So they saw a door. It
exactly
says "keep door shut." Like, what did they think?
The basement dudes, it did not faze them whatsoever.
They must be used to
They
scary
at least
basements.
didn't say anything.
Yeah, because if you think about it, like the basements that need the sump pump, you know, and they're probably like the quirky ones. The quirky basements. I don't know.
As long as I didn't hear giggling and
builder.
little feet pattering around.
Not that they ever mentioned. Yeah.
Right. Well,
This was fun.
yes, it was. I know Laura mentioned way back before we bought this equipment, like playing a game and then talking about it afterwards and things like that, and do it. So I would like to have you guys on more often and things like that. And
Yeah, you're the board game person.
Okay.
yeah, because my thing is, like, so many board game podcasts talk about, like, they go through all the rules and, like, how it plays and everything, and that, like, they teach how to play it and then, like, talk about it. Where I'm more interested in, like, the stories we get out of them. Like, the first time we played Betrayal House on the Hill, Ray walked into a room and got attacked by a ventriloquist puppet and died. And so,
Oh, the memories.
so,
of
like, that's
Speaking
what
of horror.
so that's what I
my
wanted to be
favorite
about.
board game, ironically.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to be about. Not so much like, this is how you play and, things like that. Like, it's more about just, like, the weird stories that you make out of them.
Yeah.
And when Sherlock Holmes, when your wife is the murderer. No, it wasn't Sherlock.
Frankenstein. You found Frankenstein's
No. That game where you and Jeff played against me. And
Whitehall Mystery.
Yes,
Yes.
I murdered lots of people.
Yeah, they haven't played that one yet. It's so
No,
good.
I have not.
It's so good.
I did a good job being a murderer.
I'm not surprised.
I know.
You're very organized.
Thank you.
And
They
focused.
couldn't catch me.
So thank you for
That sounds like
having
fun.
us.
Yes, thank you so much.
We should have them on when we tell our ghost stories of our house.
Oh, we can do that.
We can have like
Yeah.
a reaction. They can ask questions.
We can have an audience.
Yeah,
Exactly.
do that. Be like a
It's
part
boring
two.
if I just talk
A
to
live
you.
audience, that is.
Part two.
All right. Well, until next time, thank you.
Thank you.